She knows so much about how to handle things in the classroom, getting started, first tips so that that first day especially goes really smoothly, but then also as you work your way through the semester that you will continue to have good success in the classroom. And so I'll invite her to the front of the room. She is a lecturer in the Department of Biological Sciences and has handled 60, 80 in the past. 60, how many sections of laboratory?
Oh, yeah.
On a regular basis, with thousands, literally thousands of undergraduates going through them. And one of her big responsibilities was to work with the teaching assistants to make sure that the consistency of teaching was excellent across all of those different sections. The content was good, and that all the students that are here were getting the proper foundation for their upper division classes. A really important responsibility. So I will pass the mic to my colleague and let her pull up her own presentation. Sorry, we don't have another.
No, that's fine.
And I'll give it this much time.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Kamenicki, for that kind introduction. So it was 26 years ago that I sat in the same place that you did and came here as a master's student and somehow never managed to leave. So that's probably one of the first things that, when you think about your career and your path to that, we often think of those as, I have completed this stage and I'm planning the next stage and I'll end up in a particular place. And so it seems very straightforward. You have your goals planned out very straightforward. And what you find as you get older and more experienced is that life is not a point-by-point, A leads to B, on to C kind of thing. It's often a maze of branching pathways. Decisions determine future opportunities. And so my bit of unsolicited advice is to have a goal, certainly, and to pursue that goal with all intents and purposes, but also to keep your mind open to interesting possibilities. I know when I sat where you did, I had no idea of the different kinds of possibilities that are out there, and particularly in the sciences, it's changing, and so your opportunities, your horizons are also changing. And so I took advantage of interesting opportunities and ended up in a place that I don't think I could be happier doing what I do. So keep that in mind as you go along. All right. So some of you are going to be faced with a situation like, yes, you have a question? He's getting ready to pass out looking at all the students. So some of you may be faced with a situation like this, with a classroom full of students. This is one of my classrooms that I teach in regularly, and every single seat will be filled. We'll even sometimes have a little bit of overflow. And so technology is always fun. So what I want to give you is a short overview of things that you might want to keep in mind. This is a new phase in your education. So as an undergrad, or if you already have a graduate degree, it was about content development, about learning your field. And now you're in a new phase. So certainly you're going to be continuing your content mastery in your graduate courses. But as a teaching assistant, you'll also be learning how to teach, how to convey, how to encourage. And so you've learned the material, but now you need to learn how to teach the material. And it's a new set of challenges. All right. So first off, in this new phase, you're now an employee of the University of Toledo. And that brings with it a great degree of responsibility that you may not have had before. You're the face of UT to your students. So when people have good thoughts about UT, it's often because they had an instructor who was there for them, who was encouraging, understanding, who really conveyed the information in a way that made sense to them. If they have unfavorable thoughts about UT, it may be because they had an interaction with a professor or an instructor who was not as ideal as they had hoped. And so your attitudes influence your students, your enthusiasm, your dedication influence your students, and they reflect that back to you. All right. So your actions also reflect back onto UT. How you conduct yourself is a view of UT for most people outside of the university. So it's not just you that you think about, it's also how you portray the University of Toledo. So let's look at 3 areas of concern. First, your department, the course that you're going to be teaching. Then once you get your course and figure out what you're doing, the physical classroom, the technology that you're going to be faced with, and then student issues. So first thing to figure out is what exactly is your role? Are you the instructor of record for the course? What are your rights? What are your responsibilities? For example, is this your course that you design a syllabus for and you make all the decisions? Or do you have a course that has a set syllabus and some freedoms? Or if you're in biological sciences as a TA, you're part of multi-section courses with a set syllabus and a set series of rules, and your decisions have to fall in line with all of those other sections. So there are varying roles at the university for the different kinds of instructors. So it's important to know exactly where you fit into that scheme. So make sure that you've met with your department chair, course coordinator, advisor, whoever it is that's going over those responsibilities to make sure that you understand where your role is. Then the syllabus. So some of you already have a set syllabus. Some of you will be developing a syllabus. I view a syllabus as a contract between you and your students. It has very specific information regarding the course content, the objectives, the grading policies. And if your course doesn't have one, usually the easiest place to start is to get a copy from another instructor of the same course and use theirs to base yours off of. For example, one of the most important parts of the syllabus for me is those exam, quiz, assignment dates. So students know exactly when those requirements are due so that there's no confusion about when is that exam? I didn't understand that this worksheet was due. Those have to be very clear.
Brenda, may I just interject something?
Sure.
We've just recently been contacted by the Higher Learning Commission, which is the national body that accredits the University of Toledo and many other universities across the nation. And they're very concerned about the content on the syllabus, as Dr. Leady has mentioned. And one of the things that they are most concerned about is making sure that it is crystal clear that the student learning outcomes for that particular course are clearly delineated, so that the students that you're teaching have no question as to what to follow and what you are expecting from them. And that has to be on the syllabus along with all the other important operational information. When will the exams or quizzes be, on the homework assignments, how they're going to be graded, all those kinds of things. But you'll hear more about this probably globally. We may be posting some template syllabi on the College of Graduate Studies website that have been approved by both the HLC, this external accrediting body, and the University of Toledo's Office of Program Review, Accreditation, and Assessment. And so this is becoming, this accountability piece is becoming a much, much bigger deal than it has been in past years. And you will be part of that moving forward. Right now.
It was sitting next to my phone, too, so maybe that was causing problems. My own syllabus has gone from about 3 pages to probably 10 or 12 pages with the expansion. There's a lot of requirements. So like I said, you'll be finding out more about syllabus requirements as you go along, but it's important to have those. All right, so you've got your syllabus, you know what you're supposed to be doing, and most people overlook the idea of where you have to go. So students are wandering around this week trying to figure out where their classroom is. That's a good thing for you too, to figure out where you're going, how you're going to get there, and how things work. Each room has its own physical plant in understanding and understanding little things like how do you turn on the lights or how do you turn them off. I was in a room that had automated light shades, and they would open and close seemingly without any reason. So, mastering those kinds of things is important. Where the electrical outlets are, if you have for example, if you're bringing your laptop, not using the classroom computer, if you need a network connection or you're using the wireless, There's a public wireless that boots you off every 20 minutes versus a one that you have to sign in with your UTAD that lets you stay on, so it's important to know those things, right? The exact hardware and software. I'm kind of a techno fan, and so I love new technology, trying new things, but sometimes what you've worked out at home on your laptop or what you've worked out in your office, you bring it to the classroom and you find out, well, this is a PC and I use a Mac. I need a particular player and they don't have it, right? So those are things that are important if you develop some kind of content that is unusual in any way, to make sure. So often when I have a movie that I'm not sure about, I'll bring it to class the day before I plan to use it and play it either before or after class just to make sure that it actually works, right? Classroom support services is your friend. They can help you when the projector goes out or you can't figure out how to turn the projector on. If the computer is not doing what you expect, if there are chairs missing, those kinds of things, their job is to support all of the classroom physical plan. And here's another unsolicited bit of advice. If you treat people nicely, you get better cooperation. They're there to help you, but if you explain to them that you're having this issue, you're understanding that they have hundreds of classrooms that they're responsible for, you'll develop a rapport with them that can be a very valuable thing. All right. So where would you find that? University Teaching Center is going to be presenting, certainly, but Classroom Support Services has a link, and it'll have information on every single classroom and how many seats there are, what kind of technology is there, that kind of thing. So very important to look at that. I would do it on the web, and I would physically go there to make sure. Doors are often locked, so if you wander around this week trying to get into rooms, because of the technology that's in the rooms, most of the classrooms are locked, and so you may have to wait until next week to get a look at particular classrooms. All right. The other place in terms of technology is anybody teaching an online course in any way? All right, so Blackboard. All of us have, if you have a course here at UT, it has a Blackboard site whether you use it or not. And so most of my courses are Blackboard supported, where I post grades and handouts there, right? I also teach completely online, and I teach hybrid courses. And so Blackboard, learning those, how Blackboard works, how you interface with it. So tech support when it's not working. Again, a quick note to them, and they can help you. Again, they're helping not only the online students, but also all the faculty, so they have a huge job. And then when you look at, how do I do something new? I'm interested in trying something. The faculty resources, they have training sessions. They're very good at what they do, so they're there for you to help you. All right, so student issues. This is something that you might not have been exposed to before. So you have inside the classroom issues and outside the classroom issues. Inside the classroom, I'll touch on inclusivity and civility and academic dishonesty. Outside the classroom, some issues that you might not have thought so much about in terms of FERPA, accessibility, and sexual harassment. And so inside the classroom, how do students treat each other? When you're having a discussion and somebody has a particular point that they bring up that others don't agree with, you're there to moderate, essentially. How do the students treat you? Are they respectful? How do you treat your students? Are you respectful, right? Are you modeling correct behavior? If you treat them with indifference, why would they not treat you the same way? So you have to model the behavior that you're hoping to see back. So when we look, and also there's an issue certainly of academic dishonesty or plagiarism, which is very serious at UT. Most of our product is something that we create with our minds, that we own the rights to, and so the idea that somebody would copy that and represent it as their own work is dishonest. And students may not have run into this before, or they'll tell you that they have never run into this before. Departments often have very specific policies. There's an overall university policy, and then many departments have their own specific policies. So make sure you figure out where that policy is and read through and it's also should be part of your syllabus so that you're conveying to students that these are what their rules are and the repercussions if those aren't followed. For example, on Blackboard, when students turn in lab reports in biological sciences, they go through SafeAssign to check for plagiarism. Did it come from an online source? Did it come from a textbook? If it's cited, that's fine. If it's not cited, then that's not fine. It also searches the database of student papers so that if you copy off of your neighbor or if you steal somebody else's paper and copy it, it detects those, and then we have repercussions for that. So that tool's on Blackboard. All right. As we go to things that are still inside the classroom, but I think of them as outside, FERPA is a right to privacy law that is a federal law. And so you need to be aware that students have a right to privacy. And sometimes that creates difficulties in terms of I can't just put out all the graded exams with their names and their grades on in the front of the class, come down and just grab your exam, because other students would see their grades. Or I can't just post grades, name, and grade in the hallway, right? It's a right to privacy issue. So that makes our life a little bit more difficult, but it's a federal law. And so it's there to protect their rights. So be aware of who you discuss details with. So if I'm speaking with a colleague and I am sharing a story about one of my students, I would never include who the particular student is. I might not even say what section it's in, just a generality, because I'm sharing and maybe they have some insight into how I could solve my issue. And also be aware of where you discuss issues. It's often, I tell this story about going out to lunch with a colleague, and we were sitting there and heard her name mentioned at the table next to us, and people were discussing the gory details of her particular situation at the university as lunchtime conversation, and not in what I would consider an appropriate manner either. And so we heard that, right? So you're standing in line at the grocery store. Who's behind you? Who's ahead of you? You need to be very aware of that right to privacy. And you're the face of UT. If somebody else hears you talking about students in a not flattering manner, that gives them an impression that people at UT don't care, right? So it's not just you anymore. Accessibility. So this is something that I've been exposed to more and more as I teach, being aware that not everybody is exactly like me, right? I have certain assumptions because of what I can or can't do, and I was passing those assumptions along as I was teaching, and now I've learned that I don't know exactly everything that I need to, and I need help. And so Student Disability Services is there to convey what your students need. Particular students have particular needs that we need to meet, and how you can meet those. So we want to make every student as successful as possible, and so this is part of our responsibility. So for example, when I posted notes, I put them in a PDF, not realizing that PDFs aren't screen reader available, so people that are blind and using a screen reader might not have access to those notes. How do you give exams? Do they need extra time? Does it need to be printed in a particular manner? How much time do you allow for assignments? So those are things that if you have a student who requires particular accommodations, you will get a letter from Student Disability Services, and it will outline specifically what those needs are. So you're not left on your own. You'll have guidelines, and they'll be there to support you. So I take it as a challenge. How am I going to meet what I need to do in the classroom with what this particular student needs to be successful? Things like academic dishonesty, sexual harassment are not comfortable to think about, but again, you're in a new rule. And so harassment between the student and the professor, going either direction, is certainly something to be concerned about. Between students in a classroom, again, you're the professor, the instructor of record, the instructor. You're the one who's in charge of the classroom. If you're allowing something to happen, then you're allowing that. So you need to be in control, and it can't be tolerated. Again, in your new role, you're the one who's responsible for that kind of information. And again, you're certainly not left on your own. There's a wealth of resources for you to connect with and to get support with. So hopefully you will never run into these situations. But if you do, again, a wealth of support for you here at UT. So what do? You run into an unusual situation. You have something that you've never thought about before. Ask. If you have a mentor in your department, that's wonderful. Many departments do. You can ask somebody to try and figure out, I have this problem I'm not sure what to do with. Who do you think I should ask? And trying to find the right office if you get close. People are very helpful. They want students to be successful. So if you have an issue, they'll try and get you to the right office. All you have to do is ask. So where might you go? So on the UT page, right, that little search tool, if you type in, here's kind of my problem, it'll bring up all the offices, all the links that might be appropriate. You can also try an administrative office. Again, if you just ask someone, they'll say, oh no, it's not me, but let me get you to let me suggest this office, or let me connect you to, or let me give you a direct dial number to a particular person. So if you ask, you will be supported. You just have to reach out for help if you have a situation you're not quite sure to do with, or you think you're sure, but you're needing a little backup. We're there for you. All right. So then we get to the teaching aspect. What you teach is fairly easy, right? Course description guides you. How you teach is not so easy. And there is no single right way to do that. You can model your best professors, what was successful with you. Again, remembering that you might not be the exact model of your students, that what works for you might not work for them. So you need to keep in mind the idea that we have a diversity of backgrounds, abilities, experiences, and we need to be respectful of our students in trying to meet those needs. So again, with the no right way, one thing that I've been trying to develop in my own classroom, and again, I've been teaching for years. You would think I'd know how to do it by now. But it's a constant development kind of thing. And so one thing that I've been using in my own classrooms is something called active learning, where it's trying to get the students to be more active in participating in class instead of just being lumps in the chair that I talk to, and hopefully they never ask me questions, right? Trying to create a dialogue for back and forth so that we can increase our mastery, asking them questions, requiring answers, challenging them. Students may not like that, but that is actually good for their development. So this is one of the areas that you might investigate. So you need to be confident in your classroom, but you also have to be willing to ask questions if you're looking for a new way to convey information or wanting to develop in terms of your teaching abilities. So how do you do that? We've seen the University Teaching Center before. Dr. Schreiner will certainly be talking more with you. But they have a wealth of resources, both online and in-person kinds of development. Just asking for help, they're a wonderful resource for you as you develop as teaching assistants. So here's a few tips for the first day, right? Show up early. You need to get there, right? Figure out how to get there. Get yourself set up, right? That's always my kind of crunch time, is I got to get in, get the computer set up, get my PowerPoint open, get ready. And that's also when students want to come up and talk to you. So if you arrive a little bit early, if there's not a class ahead of you, right? You arrive a little bit early, it gives you a little bit extra confidence. I've got everything ready and I can answer questions. If you stay a little bit after class, granted, students try and run out of there as soon as time is over, but if you pack up a little bit slowly, it encourages students to come up and ask you those questions that they may not be comfortable with asking you during class. I always put up a welcome to particular course and section because they do get misplaced, right? In the biological sciences labs, we have 6 labs all in one hallway, and what we found is that students would go to the very first room and go in there. Regardless of whether it was actually the right course or the right section, they would just walk into a room. So when you walk into class and you see welcome to Biology 1120 Section 1, and you look at your paper, that's where I'm supposed to be, or, oh, this is not where I'm supposed to be, right? It gives them that reassurance, and you don't have to sort out the people that don't belong there, right? So always a good thing to have up. Start class on time, you're modeling behavior. If you start class late, why would they show up on time, right? So modeling good behavior. Go over the syllabus that first day so that they know that it's important. That is their lifeline, their contract with you for this course. Don't just pass it out and expect that they will read through it. So what I do is I call it hitting the highlights. I'll go through sections and I'll point out important information, but I tell them, and in fact in some of my courses I have a syllabus quiz that asks them particular points so that they've read through it. You probably want to hit some course content so that they get the idea that this isn't just a light, fluffy college class. There's no such thing as that. But at minimum, you give a brief overview of what the course is going to be like, review the prerequisites so that they're ready for a second day of class. They're ready to hit the material and get ready. All right. So you are starting on a very exciting period in your life, being a teaching assistant here at the University of Toledo. You're here because somebody has had a great deal of confidence in you and your abilities. And so you're going to work hard, and hopefully you're willing to learn, and you're going to have a great experience. And if you have any questions as you go along, just reach out and ask. There are lots of us that are more than willing to help you. So I wish you luck.